So unfortunately, Brian is joining us, but unable to unmute his mic as yet. We're having some technical difficulties there. So I'm going to be Brian for the first few minutes here. And I'm going to let you know that today, we're going to be talking about Lean Six Sigma tools to leverage for effective project management. This will be presented to us by Yuquan Holloway. She is a project management professional, and she is also the principal of her consulting group, Holloway Consulting Group. She brings to us today a wealth of experience. Her consulting practice focuses on helping technology teams set goals, create plans, solve complex problems. She spent about 18 years driving successful change in the information technology and supply chain arena for a Fortune 100 company. She's also a part-time instructor at, I'm going to mispronounce this, Kwan, is this Kennesaw?
It is. I've never thought about that name, but it's probably I bet you it's an old Indian name or something in Kennesaw, Georgia.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, that's great. Kennesaw State University, teaching information systems management to Coles College of Business students. I bet that's fun and challenging at the same time, right?
You up to date with the
And throughout her career, Kwan has focused on driving a culture of standard work and repeatable processes, stabilizing and simplifying core applications, reducing critical incidents, and delivering technology projects. She graduated from the Georgia Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Civil Engineering and holds an MBA from Georgia State University. In addition to her success as a leader in the fields of business and IT, she has a personal passion for education and volunteers with youth groups, and she often facilitates workshops like today and teaches classes on project management and process improvement. So without further ado, Juan, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And as I talk today, at any time, Cheryl, feel free to interrupt me. This is interactive. If you see something in the chat window, a question that I should be answering, I haven't figured out exactly how to make sure I can see the screen and my screen. So.
Yeah, no problem. I got you. So I will look for chats and any discussion that comes up that seems relevant to kind of jump in.
Awesome. And so I think Cheryl gave me a way better introduction than I would have done. But like she said, my name is Yuquan Holloway. She pronounced it perfectly. My mother calls me that. For the most part, people call me Quan. And like she mentioned, I work out of the Atlanta area, but I do get the privilege of working worldwide, and I help technology teams solve problems. And I think it takes all kinds of, no team is the same. It takes all kinds of tools and tricks in order to get some things over the finish line. And so I'm very excited about the topic that I'm sharing with you today. And it's my hopes that when you leave this conversation, you'll be encouraged to leverage some Lean Six Sigma tools in your project management practice if you're not doing so already. And I like to think that a lot of these Six Sigma tools are, in some sense, they're old school quality management tools. And before that, just good common sense, which my mother likes to tell me I was not necessarily born with. So I've enjoyed learning these things. And so some of you may be using things similar to this without even having practiced in the world of Lean. Just to give you a little bit of more background on why I come from this position, I'm a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and a project management professional. I first started working as a project manager about 21 years ago, and I started practicing Lean about 16 years ago. Of course, you can see that I'm PMP certified or certifiable, but in the world of Six Sigma, I use the terminology, I'm a master black belt. However, unlike PMI, Lean Six Sigma doesn't have a true certifying body. And so when people say I'm this or I'm that, a lot of times it's from some program that was an internal program at a company, at a college, which I studied it at Coca-Cola and as well at Georgia Tech for a continuing ed program. So I've been blending these concepts from the two over the last 16 years in order to just drive results, because I think at the end of the day, an effective project manager is one that can deliver a good product timely, with quality, and something that the customer wants and likes. I'm thinking back to where I met Brian at a workshop in San Diego gosh, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And there, that instructor in the class we were in talked about meeting the customer's expectations and really stressed that, have you truly been successful if you don't meet your customer's expectations, right? And so I like to leverage a lot of these tools to scope my project in such a way that I am meeting my customer's expectation, if not exceeding them. But I'm also delivering, that hopefully means I'm also delivering an impactful project or product. So to tell you a little bit about the tools that I'm going to talk about today, and for those of you that have a background in lean or you dabble there, you know that there are a lot more topics that I could have put on this slide. These are the ones that I'll reference in today's conversation. And I mean, there's a wealth of information out there about all of these, and I hope that you use this as just a primer. I can definitely say I have books up here about them, but just as frequently I Google to see what other people are thinking. And I often am trying to practice and leverage these tools in different ways than I've done before, because they're not a science, and they're something that you can use in a flexible way to help you get at scoping and delivering a good project. Specifically, we're going to talk about DMAIC, which is you'll find the methodology, a prominent methodology within Lean, and some of these tools right behind it, Voice of Customer, SIPOC, FMEA, are individual tools that you might fit inside of a DMAIC project. And then daily stand-up, daily scrum, you guys know what that is. That's just a way to stay connected with your team on a frequent basis. So I'm very excited about sharing these tools with you and some examples on how I might use them and how I actually use them. So specifically, DMAIC, I hear people say DMAIC sometimes. It sounds almost English, doesn't it? DMAIC is just a mnemonic, right? It stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, just as you see down the left side of the screen. In Lean Six Sigma, it's a problem-solving tool that you use to improve the capabilities of an existing process. So if something's broken, something's not performing as you expect it to perform, you throw a little bit of a DMAIC at it, right? And as you leverage DMAIC, the basis of it is that it wants you to get at understanding the existing problem that exists in that process, and then it wants you to figure out what the root cause is of that problem, and it wants you to address the root cause. If you're old enough where you used to look at Dr. House, I love that show. Dr. House would literally tear a person down to figure out what the root cause was of their illness. And sometimes people would know the medicine that they needed to give the person, and he was not interested in treating symptoms. He always wanted to fix their problem. So he would send the doctors to break into people's house and look at see what kind of environmental factors might be there, if they had a hidden problem, all of these things he was doing. And it was because he didn't want to throw solutions at the symptoms. And we often throw solutions at the symptoms. And it's because usually things are moving fast. We don't feel like we have time. We have somebody breathing down our neck. DMAIC says, step back, understand the current state, measure it, and figure out what the problem is, what's the defect, and then what is the root cause of that defect. And then you have a solution that's going to be sustainable. So, as a technology person, I'm often being told to implement something. It's implement this by this date. That's not necessarily the best thing for DMAIC, but I'm leveraging DMAIC right now on something that I implemented several months ago, but it's definitely not giving my clients the results that they thought they would get from the tool. I mean, we've implemented the tool exactly as the manufacturer designed. However, there's something to be desired. I'm leveraging DMAIC to understand what specifically we could do to improve what we've put in place. Is there a different configuration? I also leverage DMAIC a lot on workshops, on 1-2 day workshops. Before that workshop, I define, I measure. When we get together, we analyze, improve, and control. So it's just a quick methodology to help you know how to attack things that don't really have a clear path. Now, my favorite tool, if you watch MacGyver, I was starting to put a picture of MacGyver up here, but then I realized there's a new MacGyver. I don't know if you guys knew that, but he's supposed to be MacGyver's son. And I was Googling and showing my daughter an old YouTube clip of MacGyver because I always use him as a reference. And he stopped a bomb with a paper clip. And I with that was a mnemonic. You know, I remember when I first learned of SIPOC, I thought, what is this? Something from Star Trek? I'm not a Trekkie, so I wasn't excited. I use this for everything. The mnemonic stands for supplier, input, process, output, customer. And when I meet someone for the first time, when I sit down in a department, a new department, when I'm talking to a client and they have an issue, if I'm sketching, I'm usually sketching out a picture of a SIPOC because it drives the questions that I will ask to better understand their process, and it helps me bound a project, right? Because sometimes things seem so huge and large and we don't know how exactly to scope and where the process starts and stops. This is the tool that I use to help me get a quick sense of what it is I'm dealing with. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor and use an example, I'll typically say, well, who's the customer of the process? Like, who buys this service? Who uses this tool? And after I find out about one of those people, I say, well, what exactly are they looking for from this tool? Well, they're looking for a report. All right. And how timely, how frequently do they want the report? Well, what's the steps in order to generate the report? Great. What inputs are needed in order to generate those outputs from that report? Who actually provides those inputs? And as I talk through that and sketch out this picture, I learned that my S and my C are my stakeholders. And that is huge in a project. How many times have you started an initiative and you realize you overlooked a stakeholder and they end up derailing you? This is the way I make sure I understand the space and I understand the people that are involved. I have this template on my desktop at all times, not just for myself, but whenever I'm bringing on a new team member to help me, like I have to do at 3 Eastern today here on this side. I want to make sure that this young woman knows exactly what questions to ask. This is the tool that I'm going to give her to help her make sure that she covers the various questions. To give you a quick example of a SIPOC in practice, I love this one. I usually teach one about feeding the dog, and I kept trying to put my dog's picture up there. That's not my dog, but he's a cute one. I have a cockapoo myself. He's in the corner being very quiet. And every time I look at one of these feeding the dog examples on Google, I notice it is slightly different. And I bring that up because it's okay. This is not a science. This is an art. And the purpose of this tool is to just get a good framework for what all is involved in the process that you're about to address so that you can scope your project well. So of course, if we're talking about feeding my dog is the number one customer, and my dog is very, very picky. The other customers, I wouldn't say it's the family, it's me, because I truly, he's my favorite person in the house. And my yard, I don't know if my yard likes his waste, but for some, this is important, right? What are the outputs he eats? And how do we go about making sure he eats? And what are the inputs? And what are the suppliers? So this is just an example, but I encourage you to give it a try in order to start understanding what's in the, what all fits inside of your process and project. And I know you hear me using process and project a lot interchangeably. And it's because sometimes improving a process is a project, and often a project is about taking a process from here to there. And so I catch myself saying those things, but this is definitely designed in order to bound something and to get very clear on what you're working to improve. Now, hand in hand with that, remember I shared in the earlier slide that my stakeholders are all of those people that could be considered suppliers and all of those people that are customers of the process. The very best way, in my opinion, and I keep trying to think of a better way, the very best way to find out what someone thinks about something is to ask them. And I know we're in a world where a lot of times we just want to look at data, quantitative data, but I encourage you to leverage the tool of voice of the customer. I can't tell you the amount of times I've learned the most basic of things because I've asked and did discovery. I like investigative TV shows, and back in the day I was really into CSI, and I just really consider the voice of the customer my detective moment. And it's taking a look at who the suppliers and customers are of the process and picking a representative sample from those groups and just going and talking to them. What do you like about the process? What don't you like? What do you think could change? How does this process feel to you? And being really open and listening and letting the conversation go wherever the person takes the conversation has given me some of my best wins in creating solutions that work for everyone. And so I encourage you to do that. I recently went ahead and upgraded my SurveyMonkey account because freemium has really turned into premium for me. And I tell you what, what people might put in a good survey that they know is anonymous sometimes is very invaluable. So voice of the customer definitely ranks as one of my top tools. And I also like to say VOB is just as good, or VOP, right? Voice of the process, not just the stakeholders out on the outside, but what's going on with the process? Can I spy? A friend of mine used to like to say, go spy on the process. Can I spy on it? Can I go to the Gemba, right? And what that can sometimes look like in a technology world is me pretending to be a customer. I enter the application, I put my request in, and I follow it. How long did it take? What exactly does it feel like to be a customer of this process? If it's too sensitive for me to go ask customers because they're upset or whatever, then I pretend as if I'm a customer and I try my own food out, for lack of better terminology there. So very, very important to check in on the voice of the customer. And then another tool that I love is the FMEA. Now, this is not to be confused with FEMA, but if anybody needs to do FMEA, you would think that FEMA needs to, right? And an FMEA is just a systematic method to recognize and evaluate how likely your process is to fail. Now, that is what that's what it is in the DMAIC, in the context of DMAIC, remember, because we're improving processes. And you're saying, what's the likelihood? I worked at Coca-Cola for a long time. What's the likelihood for this vending machine to fail? What's the likelihood of this vending machine to fall on somebody? Because that's really dangerous and it happens. What's the likelihood for it not to vend product? And all of those different things that could potentially happen. You just go ahead. I'd like to call it admiring my risk. Let's just think about all the things that could go wrong. And once we think about those things, let's score them so that we can prioritize which ones that we want to mitigate. And I prioritize those risks by saying, how severe would it be if this happened? And not to be morbid, we'll go with the vending machine falling on someone. That's severe. It doesn't matter. Once it happens, it's severe. It's a lawsuit, it's somebody's hurt, something, right? So it's always going to be severe. How frequently might that happen? Well, maybe we look at the data and we say it happens 1 in 10,000 machines every year. Okay, so that's not very frequent. How detectable is it? How likely am I to know that a machine's going to fall? And the detection of it might be very low. It might be a really hard thing to detect, right? And so that gives me my risk priority number when I compare it against other risks. maybe even though the detectability is, even though the likelihood of it happening is low, but the detectability being low and the severity being high might mean that it becomes a higher level risk, and I focus my attention there. And so this is designed to improve processes and to make sure you're prioritizing what to fix in your process. This is the basis for how I do risk management in any project. I'm always asking my team, after we've admired all the different things that can go wrong, usually I'll do it at the kickoff meeting. At the end, I'll say, hey, what are all the ways this project can go wrong? Of course, they're the ones you hear as well, right? The resources are stretched. What if money doesn't happen like we think? Last year, I started saying, what if because of COVID, people can't travel to do the implementation, right? And as we got to watch the whole COVID, the whole world progress with it, right? The likelihood went higher on that. And so it became a risk that we needed to address.
Hey, Kwan, this is Cheryl. Before we move on, we did have an individual submit a question, Tammy. She says, do you have a standard you use as a starting point for determining the scoring for severity, frequency, and detection?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a great opportunity for what I like to call operational definition. And so the team will, if we're looking across risk, the team will come up with, here's our way to score. So for severity, 0 to 10, and depending on the industry, 10 could be death, 10 could be the system is down, 5 could be the system is slower than normal, right? And so it's, if you were to look out there on the World Wide Web of Wisdom, you find probably some different scoring mechanisms. I'd say it's something you come up with before you begin to score based on your specific business or industry. So whatever severity means for that world, frequency, likelihood of something happening, that as well, hey, this is, if it happens every day, right? If your system goes down every day, that's pretty bad. So every day might be your highest level of frequency in that situation, whereas one time in a 5-month period might be low. And then detectability, you would imagine that the scale is the inverse, right? So the lower the detectability, that means you're not going to know it's happening, then the higher that score would be. For an example, I was in a project management class once with a lady who was tasked with putting cameras along the parade route of the Peachtree. In Atlanta on the 4th of July, there's the Peachtree Classic. I can't even believe I can't remember the name of this race. We didn't run it one year and I've forgotten it. Okay, so it's the big race, but this class was the year after the horrible Boston Marathon explosions. And so they, doing a risk priority, realized that the detectability of any bad packages or bad things along along the run route down Peachtree in Atlanta was very low. And so that made it a very high risk, and they decided to do cameras and some different technology around the path to make sure that they could detect if something bad was going to happen, because the likelihood of it might have been a little bit higher now that it had happened in Boston and copycat people are crazy, but the severity of it is always the same, right? Bomb goes off, bad news. So the change in the frequency and their ability to detect being so low, which was high, then that gave it a score and made them hire somebody and assign a focus of putting cameras and presence along the route. So I gave a long answer to a short question, which is you need to determine it for your team. Anything else, Cheryl, there? Thank you for the question.
No, doesn't look like it. Although James did look up the road race for you. It is the Peachtree Road Race. Go.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, James.
Don't tell anybody from Atlanta that I've loved that one.
I'm afraid it's in the recording for posterity from here on to the eternity.
My gosh, my neighbor Mark has never missed it in like 30 years until this past year when they paused it. So wow. He will be very offended. Now, thanks for that question. And I tell you, I have a friend that says being a good project manager is all about managing risk. And I think about that a lot because, when people make these statements of huge fact, you're always, I don't like to tell anybody, well, I don't, but it makes you turn it around in your head a lot. And I think she has some really good points in that if you can manage your risk in such a way, in a good way, then you're more likely to get to a successful place. And so over the years, I've made not per first kickoff conversation. What are all the ways that this can fail? If it's a sensitive topic, like sometimes people are sensitive about the most interesting things, or you feel like the leadership doesn't want to admit that things could fail, then I'll do an anonymous survey in order for people to tell me all of the risks that they really want to tell me, but they're scared to tell me. And then at the end of each Scrum call, at the end of each meeting, I might say, hey guys, let's take a quick look at our risk. Severity is always the same, right? But it has the likelihood of this changed because of how the world has changed, or has the detectability changed? And that gives me a score. I multiply those three together. And then I sort by the highest risk priority number, and we go ahead and make sure we have a mitigation plan for the highest numbers. I was on a project last year that lasted for 18 months. This was because we were rolling out a new ERP system, a new financial system across 30 different locations. A company had acquired another company, and they needed to put them on the financials with the new ERP. And we would admire, we loved it. We had our own session once a month, in addition to just checking in, to admire our risk. And some of the risks that team would come up with, because it was full of accountants. And if you know accountants, oh my God, they go deep. We would come up with risks and share them with the woman that was running the larger project. And our risk session informed so much of the rest of the project and the things that were done in other parts of the project that I'm sure some of the other tower leads didn't know. I had finances, somebody else had supply chain, but I laughed because there would be decisions made, and I know people like, where is that coming from? It was coming from the finance team's risk sessions, because we were full of accountants who worry about things that a lot of us might not worry about. I mean, I didn't think of some of the problems these people thought of, so that was great. Scrum. So I'm sure many of you know what Scrum is. I just like to remember where it comes from. It comes from rugby. This actually is typically a video link, but I didn't test that out. But it's just a term when people reset, right? And they have to, it's very awkward looking. They're really pushing from their quadriceps too. You got to have really strong quadriceps to be a part of a Scrum. But it's just people pushing and working together, and teams learning through experiences and self-organizing. And I bring it up, it's also a term for restarting a play after stoppage. This is the depth of my rugby knowledge, just so you know. So don't think I know anything about rugby. But I bring it up because I think it's a great way, even if you're not doing an agile project, it's a great way to organize a team. And I like to call it being a bit agile-esque inside of a waterfall. It's a way for a team to have these frequent touch points. And I think there's no better way for a team to gel and come together and build relationships than to have those frequent touch points. And so it's just bringing a bit of agile into your traditional waterfall project. So that's my only thing that I'm trying to share here from the practice of lean and the whole self-organized teams meeting on a daily basis, and sprints and all that good stuff. I think it's just a good marriage. It allows you to constantly touch base, and even being more agile-esque in how you touch base with those stakeholders is important, because you can imagine the world is changing for your customers as well. And if you're not doing some type of frequent touch base check-in, their requirements are going to have changed. their expectations will have changed, but you will still be going down the same path, and you're going to miss each other, but you won't realize why you missed each other, because heck, you're doing what you said you would do when you scoped it in the first place. And so this is just something I think of all the time, about constantly staying in touch with my project team as well as my customer in a certain way, so that I'm building the right relationships. And this is just me trying to drive that home, that it's very, very important. It makes the team a lot stronger, just like you saw those guys pushing and scrambling and scrumming together. It helps you to see who your team really is. Some people are going to be so good at something, and some people are not so good at some things, but you'll never know it because you have these infrequent touch points, and you don't get to know the people well enough to help them shine. And I just find that it's the best way to drive some really good results. But I know I've talked a whole bunch about a couple of different tools. There's a lot of honorable mention ones in the world of lean that I didn't call out, like the 5 whys. If you're a parent, you even know about the 7 whys, because your kids will take it deep. Why? That's another way to get at a root cause of something, right? Understanding why. I'm asking myself, why isn't this software performing like I think it should? And the other day I got down to, because it's not designed for the problem that we have. That hurt when I got there, but it was true. Cheryl, I think I might have heard you.
Okay, Quan, so are you opening it up for questions, or do you want to do the polls right now? Do you want to do the polls, or do you want to do questions?
Or questions. Either one sounds fun.
Okay. So we did have a comment, the 7 whys, never considered that. That was a good one. All right, so guys, for those of you who are listening in, you'll see in the chat window at the top, there are 3 tabs: chat, polls, people, Q&A. So right now we're going to jump over to polls. So everybody join me by clicking polls, please. Quan, I set this up so that based on the questions you sent me, the first question is, which tool could you use to help scope and bound your project, and so on. It goes from there. Would you like the folks, everyone who's attending, to just go ahead and answer all of the, I think there were 4 questions?
I believe
yes.
So.
Okay, so guys, if you would go through, everyone answer 1 through 4, and then click the show results button at the end. So then we'll all see what the results are for the polls. So we'll give everybody, let's see, it's 12:35. Let's give everybody about a minute.
Okay.
I feel like I should have the Jeopardy music queued up, but I don't. Perfect. Love it.
Oh, I might start.
All right. All right. So I'm clicking the show results button right now, so I can just start reading out some percentages to you.
Okay, good.
So we've got about 42 in attendance. And what have I got there? 15. That's 29. So that's not quite there yet. Want to try to get at least 2/3 of everyone kind of voting.
All right, guys, there's no wrong answer.
Right? Oh, good point. Yeah, don't be shy. And
others, in my opinion.
And individual results will not be shown. So it's just an aggregate. It's all good.
Right.
That's awesome.
And
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was reading something the other day encouraging me to try an FMEA in order to scope a project. And I thought, I could see that. For some things.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. System access, what are all the ways system access could get flubbed? Let me try that out, then I can scope my project. So
it looks like on average we're getting about 32 responses on each of the questions, and number 4 is not quite there yet. So I'm going to wait till we get till about 32 responses on 4, and then we can read out the results.
Okay, Dee.
How are we doing on time? 12:36. Yeah, we're actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian just sent me a text. Let me see. Oh, yes. Yes, thank you. I did make a note of that because you're right. I forgot to do that first. Brian's reminding me to put a plug in for our April 28th session. Yep. Good call, my friend. So just so you know, Quan, Brian is able to listen and he can see the presentation, but unfortunately he just can't join as a moderator. He's using the mobile app, which is cool that Hopin has a mobile app, but apparently that only works as an attendee. You can't actually come in as a moderator. So yeah, so he's participating vicariously.
There's a reason for everything.
Right. Okay, it looks like we are around 32, 33 on each. So yeah, let's go ahead and read these out. So your first question that you posed to the folks, to our attendees, which tool could you use to help scope and bound your project? You had highest was 42.4% responding on SIPOC.
Can I see the poll?
If you stop presenting, which is totally fine, you absolutely can, then yes, you should be able to see the polls. So then, click on the polls button and then click the show polls or show results.
I get you. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, if you want to go through that, actually looks like we have a chat here. Sarah says, I love the comment that project is not successful just because complete, but have to have satisfied client. So true, right?
Yeah. I don't yet see the show polls. Let me see if I...
So are you in polls?
I am.
Okay, so at the bottom, there's a button that says show results.
Yep.
And if you click that.
Okay. Do I need to scroll up or scroll down? That's interesting. Maybe because I never voted?
No, it should show for you.
Okay. I won't.
Well, I'm sad that you don't see that. That's so odd. I don't quite understand why. So, but you're seeing the window, right? This is chat, polls, people, Q&A.
Yeah, I can see that. That's good.
And you're in polls. And are you in the event or session tab?
I bet you I'm on the stage.
Oh gosh. How did you get there?
I'm on the stage. Don't take my
yeah, so over to the right at the top, there'll be an event tab and a session tab. So you want to be in session and then go to polls.
Okay.
Let's see. Jen says, my results did not show until after I completed the poll. Okay.
Cool.
Well, I haven't. That's interesting because I haven't done anything on the poll and I clicked results and it showed. And can I share my screen? So please. Anita, I can. I'm hoping that it will show everything, but let's try it. I've not done that before, so let me give this a shot. So I want to select.
Once I voted, I can see things.
I think it's screen one. Yes, it looks like that's what I want. Okay, so now it's going to seem like tunnel vision because I'm doing presenting. Yeah, so that's going to be a little funky.
Yeah.
So on the right, which I know, try not to focus on the middle section. I wonder if I leave this no, I can't do that. Okay. Maybe if I turn my webcam. Nope, I've already got that up. All right, sorry. Okay, guys, try not to focus on the tunnel vision stuff. Just focus on the right. And per Anita's question about being able to show mine. So on the right, you should be able to see, hopefully, which tool could you use to help scope and bend your project. And I'm now scrolling. So Lean Six Sigma received 7 votes, 20%. And how do you pronounce the second one you say?
DMAIC.
DMAIC, thank you. DMAIC, 12 votes, 35%. SIPOC the most at 15 votes, 44%. And Daily Scrum, sadly, received no votes.
Oh, poor little Daily Scrum. You know what? I can agree with those top 3. I didn't even think about Lean Six Sigma that way, but yeah, it's just a body of tools, right? And DMAIC being a methodology, which if you're not quite sure how to attack a particular project, it could help, especially those that don't have a clear answer, then it could be. But I typically use the SIPOC to help me bound my project and really focus in on scope and get everybody to agree on what exactly we're focusing in on. But I can go with those other votes.
Okay, awesome. So the second one, oh, hang on, I'm trying to keep up with the chat as well. Jen said, try double clicking the tunnel vision. Yeah, that just creates, it should just flip the tab if I do that. That'll click twice to minimize the video. And I don't think that's what we want, but Yeah, see, that's not what we want.
Mm.
Okay, so let me go back to polls. Go back to show results. Okay.
Which tool could you clearly use to clearly identify your stakeholders? So Lean Six Sigma, DMAIC had 4, Lean Six Sigma 1, SIPOC had the most at 28, and FMEA had 2 votes. I typically leverage the SIPOC to identify my stakeholders. I've often found that if I go ahead and draw the SIPOC out and put it in a nice little PowerPoint, because we haven't made a point unless we put it on a PowerPoint slide, and I share that with a couple of leaders, they will point out to me other pieces of the organization that are customers of the process or project as well, and that be concerned about the company impacts how they capture the dollars. It's a really good tool to understand who the stakeholders are and not to be caught off guard when somebody cares and wants a voice and you've never heard of these people before. It's a really good way to make sure you know everybody that should.
Yeah, and it gets back to your point about the project isn't really complete or successful until the client says it was successful.
And more and more, everything is so much larger than it used to be. People care that are far flung. You're like, who are you? I mean, they have these of things. They just come out of the woodworks. And if people don't feel like their voice was heard, boy, they get those emails whipping around. So it's just a way to make sure we know everybody that should have a vote. I'm like, should I add my grandma in? I mean, all right. Number 3.
So, number 3. Yep.
Which tool could help you mitigate, manage risk? And we talked a lot about FMEA, and that's why it has the most of the votes, which I just pretend like it's a risk matrix, severity, detectability, and frequency. I actually have a mnemonic. Sorry about this. I have a mnemonic in my head for SOD. I didn't even think about that. I think often severity, occurrence, detectability. I don't know why SOD is easier for me to remember, like grass. But I guess I could use the SIPOC to understand the places where the processes that might have risk inside of that project. And a DMAIC is just a good way to look across, everything. So I can go with those, but I definitely use the FMEA framework. And last but not least, which methodology can help you determine the best way to improve a process? And DMAIC won this one, and I agree with it. But I can see that just having that daily touch point, those Scrum conversations, gets everybody engaged. And it takes it. I like to think of it makes me more of like water on the project. Sometimes we're like we're everything on a project. If we don't do it, it doesn't happen, right? If you're in the world of project management, when you can get the team, even in these little short snippets, people start taking a little bit more ownership, and it can help you determine things quicker. I really enjoy that.
Awesome. All right. Well, do you want to open it up to general questions
Sure,
at this point? Okay. So everybody, let's do this. Everyone, hopefully you can see at the top, there's Q&A. So let's actually put our questions there. This is a new feature of Hopin. We'll be trying it out for the first time today. Woohoo. So let's give it a shot. So I'm going to click on Q&A.
And while you're going there, I'm going to read Barton's question. He asked it in the chat. He said, do you have a preferred change request form or process that you use, and why do you like it? And I'd say it's definitely dependent on the project, right? If it's a process where money is required to change something, like a lot of technology projects are, then I like to have as a piece of the steering committee, which is made up representatives of the stakeholder group. Then when we share with them different things about the progress of the project, then I can also say, hey, we're looking at this change. It's outside of the scope. So those are the types of things that are on that form. And I typically am not a templated girl, except for because I don't like for one organization to bleed too much in another. And I like for things to be relevant to that organization. But I mean, the normal components that you would think would be on a change request are there. So, but I like to have it as a part of the overall project governance conversation so that no one's caught off guard. Because I used to be the queen of scope creep. I'm nice and I'm always optimistic. And I say, oh, yeah, we can do it. And then I get burned and we don't deliver timely. So I'm very intentional about, hey, we can do it, but here's what it means to your project timeline.
Okay, so it looks like Patrick put a question in the chat, but he also put it in the Q&A. And then Vance just says, thanks for all the great stuff. So he might be signing off, Vance Kirkland. So,
and he also asked us the relationship between the tools we discussed in Six Sigma. Did you see that one?
Right, Patrick did, yes. And he put that over in Q&A. Okay. So I think everybody's found Q&A. So I think we're good.
Good deal. I should go there too, since you're there.
Yeah, go for it.
So, do you have an education to the process each time you start using? Oh gosh, yes. I like talking and teaching. Sometimes I'll show a quick video. You'd be surprised. I mean, we're all into this world of video, especially my younger friends, right? My daughter's probably listening outside the door. She lives on TikTok. So there are so many cute videos. If I'm doing the 5 whys, there's an awesome one on the Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial. But I'll show a quick video. I might do a quick slide to level set, because people come from all walks and their past and history with the tool might be different. And you want to make sure that you're using it in a standard way for the team. Yes, I work in Idaho. I'm working with somebody right now who's in Nampa. Is that the right way to pronounce that?
It is.
I kept thinking the lady was in Napa.
As in California, Napa Valley, right?
It's a concrete provider, and they have locations everywhere, but one of my team members is in Nampa. Let's see. What is the relationship between the tools I discussed in Lean Six Sigma? Every last one of these that I discussed, if I were teaching a Lean Six Sigma class right now, I would teach those tools. Lean is all about removing waste, and Six Sigma is about reducing variation. People nowadays are way more on the Lean side than the Six Sigma side. I don't know if it's because people are tired of statistics and don't want to do the math, but you'll hear people just say Lean Six Sigma. So it's the marriage of removing waste, which I could have talked about the 8 wastes, or reducing variation. So every last one of those tools would be a part of a Six Sigma project, of which the main methodology is DMAIC. So, and SOD, I was using SOD in the context of FMEA, because I didn't have enough acronyms to share today.
That's awesome.
Remember, I had the slide where I talked about the risk priority number, and so I can rank my risk and know which ones I want to address first. Severity is a score. And I had shared in my presentation frequency. I like to also use occurrence. How likely is it to occur? And D is for detectable. And so I always know I multiply severity, occurrence, and detectability together once I determine my little scoring template for that particular body of work, so that I can rank apples to apples. Yeah.
Sorry, I have my mic on. I was typing. I apologize. Okay. I always forget to turn it off when I'm multitasking over here. Sorry about that.
There's a lot going on in the world today. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just, I was going to suggest I was going to check chat to see anything new over there. No new questions, no new comments. Let's see if Brian is sending me anything via text. Nope, not yet. Okay. So yeah, that was Brian actually who was asking if your firm worked in Idaho. Oh, yeah. And that's awesome. So you have one of your staff who works in Nampa.
Well, it's a client that I'm working with. So I'm working with the project team, and they're far-flung. Mostly the thing is that I'm working with a couple of different companies, and everybody's staff is now far-flung.
Right. Yeah.
And you guys are project managers, so you know it. I was laughing a couple months ago. I was working on a project where the developers were in the Philippines, and one of the analysts was in California, and then we had a contingent in Ireland, and then Atlanta. And I thought, there is no good time. I mean, that's
right, because you're worldwide, and they're all in these different time zones. Oh my goodness!
Now, so
That's crazy. So it looks like Anita posted a question.
And the best way to get into Lean Six Sigma training, okay, if you're interested in getting the training, there's a lot of training online. The difficulty with it is everybody's sharing the same to the facts. I have a couple of really good little books I use. I follow the steps every time I do it for the last 16 years. The thing is the practice of it. It's one thing to get trained in something. It's another thing not to get the opportunity to practice. So for the companies that I train for, because right now most of my training is via other companies, I partner with 6 weeks to 12 weeks of coaching so that I'm coaching people through the process of using the tools, and you'll never forget it. And I think it gives people a lot more confidence. So if you do go about getting training, make sure that you force yourself to do a project. Even if I've seen people reach out to charities and say, hey, can I do it? What's the problem you guys have? And then doing that, using the DMAIC process to fix a problem in their organization so that it sticks. Because you'll have a hard time giving examples when you interview, because you'll just be quoting off learnings and not actual things that you actually have experience with. SIPOC begins with S. Oh, I always start backwards with the SIPOC. That's my personal preference after years of doing it, because I just like to always think customer first. And so you'll see some people, instead of SIPOC, they'll say COPUS. I like to draw it the way that it is, but I always start my questions from the customer perspective, just because I think it's important to know. And it seems to drive an easier conversation if I'm saying, what output does the customer expect? How do they want it? Timely, usually it's timely, accurate. I always am using the Amazon. I just tried to not use Amazon today, but I like Amazon because they're timely and the diversity of product. Okay, so that's my output. And then I work it backwards, right? So that is my typical approach, but a lot of people do go SIPOC. I don't know how to even do that anymore, because for the last 4 or 5, I've been going backwards. And it's just good to practice it. And there's a lot of examples online on SIPOCs, but I use the SIPOC for everything.
So it's interesting that you say that, Quan. We work with someone locally as well. She's also a Lean Six Sigma individual, and she likes to start with process. So she starts in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
she loves process.
Yeah, it's
I'm not born organized. I call it BO. I'm not born organized, so I start with customer.
Oh, I love that. I'm using that, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had to learn these things.
That's great. Let's see. Do we have any
something I wanted to say to you guys. Darn it, it went out. Yeah, I love blending the two. I will practice using something. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll get better at it the next time. But I try to use it on things like laundry at the house. I do the 5 whys all the time on why my daughter won't wash the dishes. Why won't she wash? And finally, I came to the other day. I came to the answer, because I'm not making her. I was like,
she needs motivation. Mom needs to help her with motivation, right? There you go.
Yeah, I got her motivation.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Quan, it's 12:55. So questions seem to be slowing down. I don't want to. Oh, we do have one more. Okay, good. Blaine just put one in.
Oh yeah, Blaine. Change management to me is that the S and the C on SIPOC is understanding all of my stakeholders, taking that stakeholder. I will sometimes transpose the list of people that are on the S and the C, and I'll ask myself, what is it that this project means to them? What's in it for them? How do I make sure I'm communicating with them based on what's in it for them? Some of this normal templates that you use for change management, and how to get somebody connect with their hearts and minds and make it sticky. But in order to make it sticky, I'm always wondering, who are the true suppliers and customers? Because sometimes we just focus on the C, the customers, because we need to help them change and be ready. But the suppliers of the process have to change too, Maybe they got to put their information in a new system. Maybe they got to send product to a new location. Maybe they got to deal with different people. You're moving everybody's cheese, not just the customers. The customers aren't the only one benefiting. Sometimes other people are having to pay a little bit in pain or something. And if we don't lay out all the true stakeholders of a change, then we're not properly giving everybody their just due. So that's my change.
And change management is a great segue, because as it turns out, we have a presentation coming up at the next Lunch and Learn, which will talk about, I think it'll focus quite a bit on stakeholder management in terms of change management. Yeah. And then in the month of June, we have a presenter who will be talking to us about the ProSci methodology. Again, awesome. Change management, right? Yeah, so great segue. Yeah. Thanks, Blaine. That'll be, a credit for you in the... That's great.
And then James didn't tell me where his sons are in Atlanta, but he might be gone.
Let's see. What did he say in the chat? Yeah, you're right. I think he just said sons are in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he didn't.
Oh, they're far away. All right. I truly have enjoyed this. Maybe I'll get to come back and look.
Oh yeah, we hope you do, and we'd love for you to come back. And we do evening presentations as well, and maybe we can take a little bit different tack on this and do something a little bit longer, and maybe do more of a networking and involve more folks. That would be great. So I'm looking at the chat, and you are getting lots of great comments. Great presentation, lots of good information. Love the SIPOC model. So yeah.
Follow me on LinkedIn, and I think I'm gonna start doing little videos on tools, like 3-4 minutes, really short. Because I'm always looking for them myself when I'm training people, to break up the monotony of giving them slide after slide. So I'll definitely share that with you once I do it, not if I do it. Once I do it.
When you do it, awesome. So for some reason we lost you on your video. Not sure why. Okay. We can still hear you just fine.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, lots of great comments in the chat. So that's awesome. And again, for everyone who's listening, Laura had asked earlier, if the information is going to be available. And as usual, we will put a link to the recording out on our YouTube channel for you guys. There'll also be, when Kwan has an opportunity, she'll send us a PDF version of her presentation. We'll put that out on our G Drive to share the link for everyone. And then, of course, the how to report your PDU. There you go. You're back. Hello.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to send you, I sent it to you, but I'm going to send it to you again, because I have one more slide in there with those questions that you might use to capture our process. But I really appreciate you guys, and I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Let's see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just looking to see if Brian had sent another chat or another text. I didn't see it. So, okay, good. Yes, this has been wonderful. We're straight up at 1 o'clock. Nice timing. It's almost like you do project management for a living. Yeah.
That was love.
What's up with that? Kwan, thank you so much on behalf of Brian. I know he would love to say thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation, chock full of information, lots of great questions from our attendees, so clearly very engaged. And so awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, Anita sends virtual clap for you.
Virtual clap. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good day.